Welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. I interview incredible people who've dedicated their lives to helping those who've been impacted by trauma. A big thank you to our sponsors and our guests who are supporting this show. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Super excited to have as my guest today, Sara Lichstein. Sara, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to speak with you.
Awesome. Sara is a trauma therapist based in California who integrates somatic experiencing, EMDR, and IFS. She works with people pleasers, those healing from emotionally immature caregivers, and individuals navigating breakups and additional relational traumas. Her approach is rooted in helping clients reconnect with their bodies and build self-trust. Her background includes equine-assisted therapy, work in treatment in school settings, and serving as adjunct faculty at Pepperdine University teaching clinical graduate students. She is an LMFT. All right. Sara, obviously just a little bit about you. Before we get going, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Okay.
And we'll dive in.
Yeah, I'm from LA. I'm an LA native, and I live in LA still, Santa Monica. I lived in other parts, but I ended up coming back because of family, so Santa Monica, California.
I lived in LA with my sister for a while. Loved it. Loved it. When it went in, not really knowing about it, but hearing all of the kind of typical, stereotypical things about it. But it's so variegated. Like you can go in and the canyons are amazing. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that. Maybe people who aren't aware of, the more nuanced aspects of it. It's beautiful.
I agree. Yeah, that's what I also love about is like there's so many different sectors and different like landscapes that you can go to. So and the weather's obviously a plus as well.
Crazy. All right, let's go. How the heck did you get into this field? Why? What pulled you into it?
Yeah. So it's funny because initially I was like, I'm gonna do something with animals. So I started on that track of like learning more about animals. I've always been a super animal person. And then around high school, I had my first experience with therapy and found that to be tremendously helpful to get perspective outside of my world and what I was exposed to. As well as around that same time, I took my first like college course in psychology and was like really interested in it. It felt like it was very connected to the way I think. And so with that, I was like, how can I do the two of animals and therapy? So for my undergraduate, I went to University of Redlands, a program called Johnston, where I could create my own major. So I studied specifically animal-assisted therapy and made my own course to do equine-assisted therapy with more like experiential practice. So I have gone through, school, and then my associateship was doing specifically equine therapy. Now I'm doing more like in the office, but
with horses?
Not with horses yet. Not yet. But I want to return to that. Yeah.
Horses in the office.
That would be cool.
What was it about equine therapy for you?
Well, so I grew up around horses. I started riding when I was 5, so I already had like a love for them, but they're such tremendous animals to use for therapy. They're prey animals, so they're super attuned to their environment for survival reasons. So with that, as a clinician, as someone who can read the horse's behavior, like I can really attune and see what's happening to the client, where like, maybe they're not presenting congruently, but the horse, like their behavior is saying that something's kind of off. So it's like fascinating work. They're like animal biofeedback mechanisms, and also the relational part I find like fascinating for people to project with, reparative experiences, and like the embodied practice somatically, as well as just like being outside in nature can be so healing.
Right.
So yeah, I love being around horses and find it's like super helpful for therapy.
You had mentioned that you had therapy experience when you were younger? What initially brought you into therapy, if I can ask?
Yeah, of course. Um, what initially brought me, so I like was experiencing some somatic symptoms of sweating a lot, which like in high school is not ideal. And also just like in retrospect, I've always been someone who's experienced anxiety, but just maybe when I was little, like the symptoms we didn't know what that would be. So like I'd always have stomach aches. So like I started for generalized anxiety. I had some social anxiety, and then as well as had some sweating. And that experience with the therapist was, I'm still actually connected to her today, which is super special. And
Wow.
she it was helpful from her to like learn a little bit more in terms of outside of my world of like getting a better understanding of my family system, getting a little more perspective. Like at that time academics was a big stressor for me, and so like kind of taking a step back. And also a big part too is like getting the psychoeducation and learning like, oh, this is what it is. The diagnosis
Right.
really helped me, as well as she gave me some tools. And also from her like having a very reparative relationship. Like my mom used to say, like she would hear us laughing in the office, she's like, what's going on in there? But just having someone who was such a supportive like guiding person who really saw the best in you was like, so meaningful.
Yeah, yeah, I love the way you put that. And it's such a simple, seemingly simple thing, but when we experience that, we're like, wow, this is amazing. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about how things progressed for you as your therapy education unfolded. What did that look like?
Yeah. So I went to Pepperdine for graduate school. And prior to that, before I went back to school, I wanted to do traveling. I didn't know if I was going to stay in LA, and then worked at a treatment center for a couple years, which was like very helpful in terms of getting some education and crises skills. I honestly think that was probably one of the hardest jobs I experienced, working with teens in residential. And then during my traineeship, I worked at a school setting. And then after that, was doing equine therapy for a couple years, and really enjoyed the experiential somatic piece. And in my own therapy, like I had a different therapist over time, but I felt like there was a mismatch in terms of like how I was feeling in the session, like being quote unquote high functioning, like I present that I'm feeling fine, and could talk about different things, but in my body I felt quite activated. And so with that,
Activated in what sense? Like from
yeah,
anxiety or
yeah, anxiety, yeah. So not really like in my body, not really present. So I just like kind of started to notice that within my own experience with therapy. And with the horse work too, then I got really interested in, I have a background in dance as well. So like wanted to explore a little bit more about the somatics and how that could help within the therapy space. So I did go to the Embody Lab, and got like an integrative somatic therapy training, which was a nice little sampler of like the different types, and then ended up wanting to commit and study a bit more with somatic experiencing.
so that's really interesting that when you had that experience where you were able to kind of sense within yourself, you had that self-awareness about
Mm-hmm.
that mismatch, I think, with your how you were presenting and how you actually felt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people don't have that somatic awareness. I certainly didn't, and I don't even know if I do now.
Yeah.
But did that just come naturally for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think through my own like embodied practices with dance and like equine horses that helped, but I think also like we can be very attuned to maybe quote unquote like negative experiences in our body, so activation, like my heart racing and things like that. So I think there was like a very noteworthy experience that I was having in my body that like connected me to, or especially when I used to have like hyper sweat, like there was definitely signs in my body that I was like
Mm.
attuning to. So yeah.
All right. So how do things unfold further, such that you start working with people, you start working with clients, and more specifically, you're really focused on and interested in somatics. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I due to those experiences, like I really wanted to help people. Like I'm really passionate about helping people connect more to their body. I think in our society we're so cerebral, and there's so much information we can get in our body, and I think without that we're missing a lot. So doing the somatic piece with like anxiety or trauma, I find can provide a lot more depth and a lot more resourcing too. And I really enjoy helping someone to have more positive experiences with being connected to their body, um, and slowing down and being more attuned.
You mentioned, I think we mentioned in the intro, your work with people pleasers. How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, probably like many other therapists, it's experiences that I've had that I'm passionate about helping. And, I find it like fascinating, especially with the nervous system, thinking about it as like fawning. And with that kind of response, there's a lot of like mindfulness of the other and hypervigilance of like scanning environments. And then with that, there's like not a connection oftentimes to themselves. In some ways, it can be like a bit helpful in that they're super attuned to others for themselves for safety reasons. Like it is an adaptation, but to help people to move from that to be more like empowered and connected to what feels right for them is like very exciting for me, for people to like have boundaries or decide like it's okay for me to say no about this thing, and really listen, like maybe I'm saying yes to this thing but it actually really doesn't feel good for me.
So, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what you're describing, in a sense, are the kind of the foundation of trauma, right? Is people pleasing? Well, even before we get there,
Yeah.
to what degree was this your experience? I mean, did you grow up like this, needing to be hypervigilant, and
Yes.
talk more about that?
I think that one, just being as raised as a woman, I think that sometimes we often times can be very socialized to be mindful of our environment, and due to different like familial environments, like I was very much attuned to other people's emotions. So with that, I did develop more of a style to people please, to fawn, and like over the years I've been better able to like differentiate that and come into more of myself,
Hmm.
which has been like really empowering and exciting stuff for myself.
How did you learn that?
Well, I think doing a lot of the work, like I'm really passionate about of like walking, like doing the walk and talk, like what I'm saying to my clients I'm really practicing for myself. And I can only go as like my clients can only go as deep as I can. So doing somatic experiencing has really helped me to notice more of those nuances, and getting more connected to maybe my fight response, like getting, I like to say like I connect more to like my sassiness, which is something maybe I've lost with a little bit of the people pleasing. I mean, I think I've always had a bit of sassiness, but like that as a protective response. And yeah, with that, it's been really interesting to see how that shifted in my personal relationships, and how like that actually feels really nice, even though there's maybe some shifts and changes, like that I'm really listening what feels good for me and not like overextending myself, or maybe over functioning in relationships.
This is hard stuff to be able to do this. I mean, obviously it's different for everybody, but this idea of people pleasing, and because oftentimes the roots are deep, right? How can you talk about a particular maybe client you had, or how you work with someone around this topic? What do you look for? What comes up?
Yeah. Well, Yeah, there's a variety of ways in which it shares. I mean, nowadays with then people a lot more educated, people will come and, maybe share that about themselves. I'm often looking for people who like maybe overextend themselves in relationships, or when we're meeting, I'm hearing them, they're saying they're doing this thing, but like in their body, or like, there's other cues that let me know they don't really want to do it. It might show up too in like romantic relationships. Oftentimes there is like a history, like growing up with an
Hmm.
individual who adapted to people please. So often that also is a cue. And
Is that oftentimes a sign of maybe trauma?
yes, yeah, I would,
We can't say definitively all the
right,
time, but
right.
maybe,
Yes, yeah, I would say so.
probably.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So, how do things unfold for you? What does that look like when you're working with someone and maybe you see that disconnect or experience that disconnect? How are you kind of peeling the onion layers back, if you will?
Yeah. Um, well, a big piece I think is like naming it, and also providing psychoeducation surrounding it, of like, oh, there's telling them too about the different threat responses, and fawning being one of them. It's a newer one, so not everyone's like aware of it, but I might say like, that sounds similar to people pleasing. Like, does that like resonate with you in your relationships? It might look like this. Um, Also, like in the body, if there's like a lot of hypervigilance, then I get curious about that.
Hmm.
A lot of it too is like tracking in the body, and I think like the slowing down, because with anxiety or being hypervigilant, like things are moving quite quickly. So like also in our work, slowing things down, getting curious about what's showing up in the body. Um, and I think the pausing, slowing down, and checking in with the body is a really helpful way to start to shift things, or for people to start to notice and be curious about what their tendency is versus like what feels grounded to them.
How do you define people pleasing?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say someone who tends to be vigilant or concerned with other people's needs, maybe over themselves. Maybe at times that looks like sacrificing their own needs or wants for someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about that, and that just can oftentimes be so insidious because it oftentimes presents a such a conflict.
Hmm.
You're wanting to do something, or you do something, but you're not wanting to do it at all,
Right.
right? And it just seems to me like it just can fuel this intense anxiety, and when it becomes a pattern, we find ourselves living a life that we don't want.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I see a lot with clients too, is like there's high burnout and exhaustion. So sometimes I'll see clients come to that end when it's like, um, they've really overextended themselves. And also, I think a bit too of like regret. Like they're like, I did this thing, and then afterward, I'm like, ugh, I kind of wish I didn't do
Right.
that.
So when you're working with someone like this, you mentioned kind of encouraging somatic awareness, providing that foundation for that.
Hmm.
Are there, because a lot of times sometimes people don't even know how to tap into, what do you mean, be aware of my body? What are you
Right.
talking about? Or, no, it's too triggering.
Hmm. Yeah.
How do you work with that? What do you do?
Yeah, I think it's definitely scaffolding based on a client like that. And maybe initially, too, it's like, where do you attune and notice maybe desire? And like where, like sometimes I'll offer a body scan of like, or I'll model to them of like, oh, when I'm feeling this way, I might notice it in my stomach. So it's just like kind of first noticing. Of course, with different trauma, like going to the body can be quite scary or like uncomfortable or dissociative. So with that slowing down and Yeah, I think attuning first to pleasure is oftentimes
Hmm.
the way I'll invite that curiosity.
And with a situation like people pleasing, how does that somatic awareness help somebody, help the client?
Right. Um, will it help someone to really attune to their body? A mentor of mine says, like, the body never lies. Like, it always tells the truth. It's maybe a little bit quieter than the mind, but the mind has thoughts, and thoughts are not facts. So I think with that, it's like the body will let you know if something feels good or doesn't feel good.
Mm.
So with that, like, getting that information can better inform the person of like what makes me want to lean towards that. Is that like a response due to my trauma, due, to other experiences, or does this actually feel good for me and good for me in my body?
Let's take a shift a little bit. You talked earlier on about one of your experiences working with teens. You
Hmm.
said that was like maybe one of the most challenging experiences you've
Yeah.
had. I'm curious, what about that was challenging for you?
Yeah. So I hadn't yet gone to grad school, and I was a residential counselor, and yeah, I, it is a bit overwhelming to be in that, that environment. It wasn't a touch facility, so like if someone were to act out or get physical, there's not much like the staff could do. And I think also, like, at that time, getting more confident within myself, even my own people pleasing tendencies of like maybe I didn't want to enforce a rule because I was worried about how someone may react. But the kids were all like so lovely, and it's also so fun to work with like the teens. But yeah, it was hard to manage the different challenges that came up, or the level of activation if someone was having like a big, if they were throwing something, or once I had a client who, she didn't like that I enforced a rule and then was like circling my car with a rock. And I was like, there's nothing I can do if this client decides to throw a rock at my car. But so in those ways, it was quite challenging. But I think a big piece I learned there too is how important rapport is with
Hmm.
those clients, and like also using humor, which is a helpful way for me too to like express different interventions. And like that was the humor piece too is very connective for the teens as well.
As a people pleaser, how did that show up in your work earlier on?
Hmm.
I'm curious what that would look like.
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, Probably early on, it was like like a bit like one, doing a good job. Like the beginning was like nerve wracking for me, and being a therapist, like getting comfortable within that professional role. Um, and also, like, probably I wouldn't challenge clients quite as much as I would now, and have the ability within myself to sit with more of like the more challenging experiences that someone might have, as well as like my boundaries probably like weren't as refined as they are now. Like, when I worked at the equine site, people who often came to do equine therapy were like often people who've tried other modalities and it wasn't connected, so like more complex cases, as
Hmm.
well as the environment that I was in was a more higher SES environment, so also like more maybe entitled clients. So I notice a lot of people will be texting me and like asking for more things, like when I wasn't meeting with them or things like that. And
Right.
yeah, was learning to navigate those situations and dealing with like seeing teens or kids and working with their parents and being assertive with them and giving them feedback was something that was like a learning curve as well.
What do you feel, Sarah, allows you to do this work?
Mm.
What do you feel is like, would you say one of your strengths in the work you do?
Yeah. Well, I really love my job, which is such a blessing. I think, one, I'm naturally a very curious person, and my friends will say I'm like really non-judgmental. Like, I'm not really bothered by too much per se. So like, I think that really helps. And like, yeah, the care for the people that I meet with, like I genuinely really do care, for them and for their success and for the growth that they're hoping for and the hope for that as well. Yeah, and I also really love that like the job invites you to continue to grow and challenge yourself and like constantly learning and where can I learn more to help this client? Like I love that part of the job too. So, yeah.
When you were starting out, even as you progressed, did you understand how necessary it was for you as a therapist or therapists in general, like to do their own work?
Yeah, yeah. I think I learned more and more as time progressed, but yeah, I felt like how could I do this job without having my own therapy? There are some clinicians and some in my graduate program who like hadn't done therapy before, and I was really curious as to like, that's interesting to not have that experience and know you want to do this, but yeah, for me, more and more every time I'm like learning more about myself, doing more of the somatic experience as a client, has really helped me to grow, to challenge myself, and then that is only beneficial for my clients and also for my my own well-being and showing up as the most grounded version of myself that I could.
So who would you say you work with? Who's like your clientele?
I'm so sorry.
I feel bad today. I have no idea.
Sorry, I'm doing a workshop. I'm in the middle of a workshop, so I like just muted it. But
Oh, no worries.
I work with a wide variety, so I've seen like 5 and up. I work a lot with teens and adults, and do some couples and adult children and parents. But yeah, I work a lot with people who have anxiety, who have relational trauma. That's like something that I'm very passionate about helping people with. LGBTQIA plus community. And then who oftentimes people come to me too because maybe like myself, I've done the talk therapy and like cognitively know all these things, but there's a disconnect in terms of what you're wanting, or it's like maybe I practice all these skills, I know these skills, but I'm not getting grounded, I'm not like getting the results that I would like. So people who are looking for a little more depth or creating shifts that maybe they weren't getting in like traditional talk therapy.
Awesome, awesome. All right, how do people learn more about you? What's the best way?
So they can go through my website, Sara Lichstein, LMFT.com. I'm also on Instagram. I'm not as active on it, but I am there, which is somatics Sara. I might have to look that up actually. Somatics with Sara. I may have to check.
Hold on, let me check right now. Somatics with Sara.
Clearly, I don't go on that frequently. But yeah, somatics _with _Sara.
All right, somatics. Okay, we'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. All right, Sara, that is it. You did it.
Thanks so much. It was so great to speak with you. I appreciate
All right,
it.
likewise. All right, take care.
Take care.